I am Sean Webb, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Zach Poitra, and this is Your Superior Self.
I'm Andy Mant, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Sue Jackson, and this is Your Superior Self.
I'm Ginny Sarasvati, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
What is up, Superior Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Your Superior Self. I am Trey Downs, and thank you for joining. Thank you for hanging out. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Fatherhood is lit, and I love every second of it. Especially like right now, I'm trying to record this episode, and I have a 1-year-old daughter messing around with the trash behind me, and we're actually at the beach this weekend, so I have my travel kit, and I'm trying to get this episode prepared for you, and hanging out with 3 kids in the background, it makes it challenging, but I love it. I wouldn't change it for a second. It keeps me real, it keeps me connected, it keeps me young, and I hope wherever you are enjoying your kids, enjoying your family, and enjoying this moment. So thank you for downloading. Thank you for taking the time to hang out. I have a very incredible guest today. Her name is Eugenia Kuzmina, and she is the triple threat. She is an actress, comedian, model. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, that's like everything if you're in show business. And she's funny. She's great. I love this conversation. It's raw. It's powerful. It's authentic. And she talks about her childhood growing up in Russia, Mother Russia, and her transition over here to the States and what that was like, and her, not beliefs, but like her worldly outlook on things. And that was, the baby's fine, don't worry. She just dropped a trash can, and now she's picking up the remains of it. But I love this conversation. It's cool. It's very, especially now with what's going on in the world, it's very cool to have a conversation with someone who is so worldly as Eugenia. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Here's a little preview of what is to come. That is some pretty powerful stuff right there. Like that, the entire conversation is just as powerful. So make sure you guys listen to the entire thing. Please leave a rating and review wherever you get your podcast from. It helps me scale the show. It helps me get this out to those who may need it. If you want to find out more about me, you can do that by going to yoursuperiorself.com. Leave me a message over there, or you can check me out on Instagram at tdowns80 and Twitter at downstray. So without further ado, guys, thank you guys so much for listening. Here is my conversation with Eugenia Kuzmina.
Hello, everyone. This is Eugenia Kuzmina, and I'm really excited to join you on Your Super Self show.
That was awesome. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really busy, actually busier than I anticipated. So in these changing times, I became a teacher, which I never thought I would be one day. But because the kids are homeschooled, we basically have like 8 to 5 every day, and I have to teach them math, and I'm terrible at it.
So just to give everyone context when this airs, we're actually going through a pretty rough time here, something that is very I mean, it's for the history books. It is, everyone's pretty much on lockdown, especially since the coronavirus has come over here to the States, and we're starting to see the growth, and it start affecting all the cities, major cities in the United States. How are you guys making out on the West Coast in LA?
Well, it's interesting because I think you can see in the times like this, like who people really are, so for me it's interesting like to see the support and like help and kindness, and that's very inspirational, and the other way around. But I think the primal things really come out. So even going to the store, you can see like if people would share, like, another day I went to buy sanitizer that everybody is fighting for, right? And you could see like if people are grabbing the last one, or they would share like a few with others. So I mean, it's definitely a big changing time. I think it's a lot of my friends are comedians, and I think laughter is something that's really necessary in times like that. In any situation, and also connection, because we're all pretty much isolated. So anything, I think, reaching out to like friends and communicating is just a different way of doing. And also I think just being kind of supportive and looking at what others need that like you have and maybe they don't have is very, very important at this point.
Yeah, I think our ancestors will be kicking our ass right now if they saw how we were acting. I mean, people are buying up toilet paper. They're acting, they're just buying dumb things at the grocery store. Like you can't even I went the other day and you can't even buy like beef. And it's ridiculous, I think.
Yeah.
I think,
it's interesting because, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
You're good. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting because coming from Russia, like I didn't live through this situation, obviously, but we grew up in food lines. So it was pretty much the same. We had like no food and, tickets, and you can also pretty much see, how people behaved. And it was interesting. Like some people really united through singing and things like that, and laughter and humor and connection, and others would be really, animalistic and violent. So it's kind of like ringing the bell for me what's happening now.
What's crazy is that someone the other day said to me, like, this is probably the closest thing to a feeling that of being run by a communist country. Like if you were in a communist country, this would be the closest feeling to that.
Absolutely, especially in times when the regime is collapsing. I think that's what was happening for us. And it was pretty much the same. I literally, I think I feel so calm just because I witnessed a lot of things. And, I try to tell people just to not panic, at least, emotionally, and stay there for each other, because that's how I'm sure we get through that, is just by being there for other people who needs us and not being like isolated and emotionally,
Well, seeing where we're at today and your experience with it, like where do you see us going next as a country? Like what do you predict will be the next phase?
Okay, as a really well-known psychic, from my experience and from my feeling what's happening, like I know my husband runs the Miramax studio, so the studio has been closed and it was escalating kind of really fast. All the productions that were planned for us, to start very soon, like everything's canceled, all the events, film festival, like everything in entertainment business has stopped. So just speaking from that perspective, obviously there is much more global perspective, but that is my experience. I think things would change for the future. I think forever, there's just everything will be online, all the platforms. I can see a lot of my comedian friends are still creating and working. It's just they're working on green screens. My modeling agency actually reached out and said, hey, if your husband is a photographer or, like a stylist, or you have a team of people who are part of your family, we would really like to work with you. So I think the company is still trying to work, which
Sure.
makes sense. I mean, so many people would lose their jobs and are losing their jobs, which is really heartbreaking. So in that way, the things are changing, and I think the entertainment industry would never be the same ever. But things will still exist because we're humans, and we need storytelling, we need
Mm.
connection. It's going to be a different way of working for all of us. And on a bigger scale, my hope honestly is that people, it's kind of like a trial for your soul in so many ways, I would say, talking in that language, that it's about compassion for each other and simple things. We all fight over material things like toilet paper and food, but actually what will help us is being compassionate, kind, and supportive. So I think those qualities would definitely be cultivated over
Mm.
time, and life teaches us that that's the way out.
Yeah. No, I think it's a big reset button for us. I think it's the universe hitting reset on a lot of things that's going on in this world that it doesn't necessarily agree with. And I think this is a big, I don't care what country you're from, like, there's nothing greater than the universe. There's nothing greater than Mother Nature. This virus that is going around is really humbling a lot of people. It's humbling the United States because we thought we were the biggest and baddest, and it's showing our weakness, and it's showing we weren't prepared for this. And a lot of people are going to go back to square one, and it's going to hurt. Like, but this event, this monumental event, should prepare people to start from the beginnings, to kind of like accept it and welcome it, and accept
For sure.
like welcome the change that it's going to bring. Like, all right, like I know, like, the stock market is going to take a shit. Like, I know that. Like, it is what it is. I mean, you just see it. Like, today they started the computerized stock trading. They took the people off the floor because of the fear. And I was meditating today, and I was just kind of doing my meditation, like my breathing, focusing on the moment, and like really, just praying and talking to the universe. And like I was essentially like, what is the lesson to be learned here? And it's just to accept it and to be open to it,
Mm-hmm.
because the change can be positive. It could be something that we need, because it kind of the earth knows when to reset. The
Absolutely.
universe knows when to reset, and it knows when we get a little bit too I don't know, we get too ahead of ourselves, and we start doing, like, technology is rushing a lot of it's just rushing us, I think. And I think that we need to get back to the basics as the human species, as a conscious being. And we need to stop getting ahead of ourselves and like really focus on our basics, on the foundations that we were built on. And I think this could be a good thing. We just have to look at it as an opportunity to kind of recenter, and just get back to just having faith, right?
Faith, and also values, and morals, I think. And it's so interesting because right before this happened, I was working on some characters. I was taking improv at the Groundlings, and I was like, this is an improv for life. You basically, the rules of improv is like accept it, be in the moment, present, not plan, not anticipate, just say yes to the moment and move forward. So
Say yes to the moment. I love
yes,
that.
yeah, and there's so many lessons in that.
Say yes to the moment. Yeah, because I mean, there's a lot of fear, right? Fear, like, kind of, like it makes us do dumb shit. Like, it makes us do, take our money out of the stock market when the next day the stock market turns, and now we lost a lot of money. Or it makes us be very isolated because we're scared to talk to our neighbors, or it makes us go out and buy thousands and thousands of rolls of toilet paper because we're afraid we're going to run out. I mean, just be
Sure.
open. Be open. Say yes to the experience. Yes to the learning experience. Oh, man, that's
Yeah,
great.
for sure. Yeah, I think there's like definitely bigger to this life. That's just your overthinking and, your brain kind of going to different directions. I think it's very important to stop and meditate, like you said, and be grateful for whatever you have,
Sure.
no matter what.
So Eugenia, for those who don't know, you're an actress, you're a comedian. I just watched a little bit of your YouTube not too long ago. Very funny stuff, good stuff. What would you consider yourself more as, a comedian or an actress? Well, I should say this. What's your first love?
Yeah, thank you for this question, actually, and the way you phrased it, because, I it's very hard for me to label myself as one thing or the other. I find creative avenues through which I can express and communicate with people through storytelling. And I love acting for sure. Storytelling is a big passion. Comedy is just another dip, on top of it, because sometimes you have to communicate to people, and reaching them through humor is much easier, and it helps in any conversation. And I think comedians are really courageous to talk about topics that are not easy, and the way they reach it, I found it's an amazing way, especially, talking to people. I mean, who knows what's going to happen to the shows right now, but
Sure.
For me, it was always very important to connect to others through storytelling and, share life and live audiences, because there's no edit. There's nobody who controls, the narrative. It's there. Like, people respond to that, and people respond to truth. That's what I figured. A lot of times people would say, like, are you funny? And like, did you always knew you were funny? And I always say, this job is not about being funny. It's actually about being really honest. So, I don't really have one thing, but obviously I love acting and comedy and modeling. It's interesting for me, as long as it's storytelling and, I work with amazing artists, but there's not as much creative,
Sure.
feel for me.
Well, you can be creative in what you wear, right? I mean, that's, I
Sure.
guess,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
That's a story in
Absolutely. Yeah,
itself.
that's true. No, that's true. That's true. Everybody, there are definitely people who find that. But for me, storytelling, I think, is more of the thing that makes me passionate.
You can kind of combine comedy and like modeling, right? Like that's what Ben Stiller did in that movie. What is that? He has the blue steel. Yes, Zoolander. Oh,
It's so funny. I saw this film in Paris, the first one, right? And I think they had rental still, like they had DVDs. So I went to like rent it. It was like 14 or whatever it came out. And I come in and I'm like, hi, this movie, because, I'm into modeling, just want to watch something. And the guy's like, this movie is so bad, I'm going to give it to you for free. So he gave me the disc for free. And I watched, I was like, oh my God, how could this guy say that? Like, it's the first one, especially. I don't know. At least when you're in the fashion business, you can totally relate to that.
like how close I mean, obviously it's a spoof, right? But like, how is there similarities in the fashion business?
100%. I mean, the first one. I think the second one was trying to be, honestly, to be a little bit too complicated with the storyline and like the cult, and it was like a little over trying to be sketchy, almost like a sketch, like Groundlings. But the first one was very true. I mean, this job is all about appearances, and it's not a talent that you can really cultivate. It's something that's given to you, and it's so subjective. Like, there's no objective way to say what's beautiful and not. So I think a lot of people just take it way too seriously, being on the inside, while, there's so many other things that are happening on the outside.
Yeah. I mean, you're in a tough industry, right? Like you're like the triple threat though. So you're the model, comedian, actress, like, I mean, all of those things, right? Like a comedian, you can kind of get away with, if I wanted to be a comedian, like I had to be funny. I don't necessarily need to look good, but I can be funny. An actress, like you're definitely has some competition in that. Like you have to be good at storytelling, like you said, and somewhat, obviously people are looking at the way you look, and you have to be distinct and different. And then modeling, you definitely have to be like a certain type of look. Like you have to be very, I don't know, like you have to be secure, have a lot of confidence. Like growing up or getting into the industry, like did you have a problem with that ever? Like did you ever feel like you didn't belong or that you wanted to quit? Like, I mean, how do you, I don't know, how do you get to where you're at?
Yeah, I also want to add, I'm not a Russian spy. I always have to add that. About talking about triple threat. Well, yeah, of course. I thank you for asking this question. It's very interesting. I definitely don't have the superpower of confidence of, anything. I mean, now, yes, for sure. Now, I think becoming a mom gave me a completely different perspective. But I was never confident. I think when you're so young, and I was in this job literally since I was born, but then professionally when I was 13. So it was time when as a child everything changes and you're super insecure, and you have to be around adults signing all these contracts and project that security and that success and everything. And I think it's just a skill that I learned first, how to show it on the outside, just because it was part of my job, even though I was so super insecure. And you would say, a lot of times, a lot of my model friends, they want to go to acting. So I brought them to some acting classes. And what's shocking is this gorgeous, all these gorgeous Amazons, they walk in and they just don't know who they are. They have no ability to be secure. And it's true, because this business doesn't teach you, even though you project it and that's what it is. A lot of times people would tell you who you are. So I think it takes a lot of inner work, and as a model you just don't have time for that because you're so busy with with your job. So I feel like after you start acting, obviously that's a job that is kind of like a psychology, and it teaches you to be really introspective and reflective and compassionate and empathetic about human nature. So I think that's the step when you learn nothing is personal, and you just have security in things that in different values. You start to develop values that are dear to you. And that as a mom, of course, you just don't your job is just your job. It's not the end of the world. And I didn't come to this business because I wanted to move to LA, and I couldn't wait to be to be famous, or whatever. It's fine.
Yeah.
I came here just because my husband was working here and it happened, and it's my job. But then I go home and my kids are everything and the most important thing for me.
Sure.
So the confidence comes from that. It's not about you. It's just about other things.
Yeah,
And
but I mean, to
really
think
care.
that you found your confidence in after being a mom, a lot of moms don't have confidence after they birth kids, right? I mean, they obviously your
Takes
body
time.
goes through a lot of changes, and
Well, talking about changes, it's so true. It's kind of what we're going through now. It's a natural thing, it's one thing that you have no control over, that's so much bigger than you. And you just listen to your instinct. So you develop this amazing thing, which is just part of you, since, it's part of your human nature. You just know how to be a mom. You just know.
yeah, no, you know how to be you know how to be a mom. It's crazy. Even as a dad, I was a young dad. Well, I was 27 when I became a dad, and
That's young.
yeah, I wasn't ready. But it just kind of kicks in, right? That natural feeling of I got to take care of something that's greater than myself, and I have to quit doing all that childish, going out to the bars and party life. I have to actually,
That's fine.
I mean, I think it's the instinct. I think it's it's in all of us. I think it's but to be in your position where you are modeling clothes, you're an actress, people are seeing you, I mean, to be a mom and then gain that confidence afterwards, says a lot, because a lot of moms, I think personally, would not do that. They would, some of them go through this change that I mean, there's nothing more beautiful than a mother. Don't get me wrong. But I think a lot of moms have this self-consciousness about, I'm not the same person that I was before the child. And for you to step up and to not let that bother you, I mean, that's huge. I mean, I've never birthed a child. I'm just saying, I've sat there and ate a thing of ice cream with my wife while she was pregnant. And, I didn't go through all the physical changes that she did. However, I couldn't go out there and go on the runway and model dresses and go on the stage and be a comedian and go in a movie and act. I mean, it's just, it's crazy. I mean, you got to have the commitment. You got to have that confidence. And, I think the confidence is the biggest thing, right? I mean, you got to go up there and own it.
Well, it's interesting because, I had an advantage in a way. I didn't live in one culture, right? So I grew up in Russia, and then I grew up in Paris, and then I moved to US. So I had completely different set of values that the society was giving me in a way. So I never had a lot of times you would open a magazine and say moms can do that, and there's a lot of social chatter that will make you insecure. That's what I feel. There's a lot of things that say oh, you can't do that. While you're a mom, you you can't have fun, or just, you have to be good at all times. And then you start doubting yourself. But then, I felt because I wasn't married to one society, I was able to listen more to my instincts and say, you know what, I'm fine. I'm a mom, and also I can work. Don't tell me what not to wear. I can do whatever I want.
That's crazy. So what society do you most identify with? Is it the Russian, or is it the United States?
No, I don't identify with any society in that sense. I mean, I take a little things from each, which are interesting, but politics we can talk about in another episode. But, I take good things and bad things, but I also don't want to identify with one culture or the other. For me, it's more about, I'm more humanitarian, I would say,
When did you come to the States?
Well, I moved, it was 13 years ago. I moved to New York. Before that, I lived in Paris. So, I would even say that I feel very French. France definitely is in my heart. I mean, obviously, I still have a little bit of a Russian accent, so,
Sure. But you said it so French, though. Patty, I say Paris.
Yes.
Paris.
Yeah. Yeah, I like, there's a lot of things that I like in French culture, let's say. Maybe just because I was a teenager. So.
Yeah, but that's so, I mean, you're living in Paris, that is insane. To think about, I would love to, thinking about Ernest Hemingway. This is the show is basically named after one of his quotes, and I mean, I'm obsessed with his writing, his books. The Sun Also Rises is one of my favorite. But I mean, to grow up in that area, like that area, and look at some of the architecture and the bridges that are older than they're the oldest monuments and buildings in the history of the world. I mean, it's amazing. It's so romantic. The cafes.
Yeah.
We don't have any of that over here, right? I mean, you don't have the third place where the work, the home, and then third place where you go to talk politics, have some tea or have a beer or whatever, and just enjoy your friends. I mean, we don't have that. I mean, Paris is legit.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what I say. Every culture, I feel, has good things and bad things. So it's it's always interesting to experience it, to actually not just have an idea about it, but actually see it. So there's definitely good parts, and I love the romantic things, but there's some other things, riots and things like that, so, but and America has amazing also things positive. I feel Americans are very positive, actually. It's such a positive culture. Coming from Russia, everybody would say why, when I was back to Moscow, everybody was why are you smiling so much? What's wrong with you? And I was I don't know. But actually, I'm just so used that in America is such a positive culture that when you go back to Russians are very fatalistic and realistic. So, it was very interesting. So, I mean, I love Los Angeles. I love living in the city, and, there are good things and bad things and bad about it, but
Sure.
there are definitely good things in America too.
So you started out modeling in Russia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to Paris. And when did your acting career pick up?
I never thought that I could, do this as a career. To be honest, I loved storytelling and like playing, dress up and stuff like that. But in Russia, there was so much propaganda, and the only people who can act were like kids of somebody. It was such a small world, and very. There was a lot of corruption. I wouldn't lie about
Just
that.
Just a little bit.
Yes. No, now it's so much broader. There's so many channels, things like that. But yeah, I never thought about it. So I started acting after I married my husband, who is a producer. So it's a funny cliche, they say like, well, my husband is a producer. So, but it's true. That's when I started acting, I moved to LA, and I was just surrounded by this business. And it was like an organic, natural transition, which I definitely like fell in love with, but I never thought that I could do that. So I started after I had kids and after like modeling. So maybe like 10, 11 years ago when I first got my first job.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I think
Yeah.
acting is so fun. I just don't have, that would like remembering the lines. It's so tough, right? Like how, is there some type of method that you use to remember your lines? Like, is there a storyboard or something that you use?
Yes. Yeah. There are lots of methods, and I love learning so much. So you learn a lot about how like humans, behave and learn things. And the way to learn lines is one of the ways. One of the casting directors, his name is Matthew Barry. He cast Notebook and many other things. So he taught me this way. You look down and then you memorize the line, right? You read it, you look down at the page, you read it, memorize it. And then you look up and hold it for 3 seconds and then say it, because while you hold it in your memory and don't say it, like you're going to start to form an image. And we really memorize by like images much faster. So then you say the line and then you go back again, hold for 3 seconds and then say next sentence. We can't memorize everything at once. So that way, like your brain won't be overwhelmed. And you also will have images to every sentence. And then it's so much easier than trying to like make sense out of words.
What movie have you done where you put your entire being into it and like, your entire soul into it?
Well, I would say, I'm always growing. So there definitely, hopefully, will be more challenging movies. And I feel I haven't explored my potential yet, because I feel a lot of times in Hollywood, honestly, like it's expanding now. There are much more diverse roles, thank God. But when I started acting, the only roles I would get are like Russian prostitutes and spies. And yeah, it's true. So there's not a lot of things to explore. And I was like, hey, can I be like the girl that everybody falls in love with? And they're like, no, you have an accent. Like that's like you'll be a Russian spy.
Russian prostitute. That's it. That's all you.
Yeah,
I
mastered that role. Is like I mastered every role. So yeah, I love challenging and interesting characters. I think I played a role of a mom recently where I think that my husband is that and I have to take care of my 3 kids. It didn't come out yet, but it's in the process of making, of editing. And I think that was very challenging just because, it was something more than those cliche roles. And also I felt like I could bring a whole 3-dimensional, human being to that. Sure.
What role do you want to do like badly? Like what's your dream role?
It's very hard for women to play complex characters, and I love somebody who's not very socially accepted. Like it's easy to play a hero, and especially if you fit the mold, like you look a certain way that people would cast you as a hero. But I love to play somebody who's not socially acceptable, or somebody who is not heard, like those voices that are not heard and the stories that are not heard and complex. And somebody who like you think one thing about them and then the more you know, like the more you peel those layers. No, metaphysics, like in like something like that storyline. I love the characters of witches, like kind of women, you know, who are very naughty and, you know, have powers and maybe some people are scared of. I love those characters. Or as long as they have like a rich inner life and other things going on for them. Or just any, you know, storylines that are complex.
Yeah, I feel like you'd be a good villain.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, would definitely, you know, I love exploring different parts.
Russian spy.
Here. I'm working on one. I just finished shooting Spy City actually, and like working on another one.
That is awesome. Like, what if you weren't doing this? If you weren't in this industry, like, what else would you be doing? Like, what other talents that you really wish you could you know, apply to right now?
You know, I love humans. I love people. Honestly, like I have such a hope for people and for humanity. So for me, like being a psychologist, maybe, you know, and just exploring things, or detective. I love discovering things. I think this is like part of the job also as an actor to discover stuff. So
Sure. I mean, as an actor, you have to like really dive into somebody's psyche. Like you got to see the ego. Like, I mean, they give you a script and you automatically have to put yourself in that position.
Yeah, exactly.
I think a lot, like I've heard this before, like actors and actresses, like have a hard time because they get into a role so much, like that they start becoming that person because they die. Like it takes months, you know, obviously, you know, there are some examples of people like taking over that character, and not for the better either, like just that character taking over them. And it's crazy. Like you have to put yourself mentally in that position.
Yeah, it's not easy to be married to an actor. You can ask my husband. He's definitely a hero for me because things that he has to put up with sometimes is like, okay, like this is
like,
what
what
it
have you
is.
done though? Like what have you done that like you getting into the role? Like what are some techniques that you use to get yourself in character?
Well, everything. I mean, like I'm working on this really complex character right now for something in the future that I can't really talk, but I have to be like a musician. So basically I have to learn the skills of like playing the piano and singing, and, you know, then you have to go out in public and like perform. And, you know, I mean, who does that? You know? So it's like you just become other, like I mean, you're still yourself, but you learn the skills that you wouldn't really do. And, you know, your husband is like, what happened to my wife? Like I knew who you were, and now suddenly you're a singer and like you play music, and like who are you? You know? So like these things, or like you talk to him and you react in a weird way, and he's like, why are you acting so strange? And then he's like, oh, okay, you're just working on a role, so I get it. I should like give you some space.
It's crazy. I mean, yeah, I mean, to come home and have your wife, I don't know, doing something totally different, and you're just kind of like, what? Where'd this come from?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're working. Okay, I got you now.
Yeah. So, you know, I think you have to have boundaries and like be respectful of, if you're an actor, like you have to be respectful of people you are with, and, you know, say like, okay, this is a job, but I can step outside of that. Like it's a very demanding job, but, you know, I have to take care of other people, and like, you know, to be a wife and caring person just as myself without like having the role affect me.
Well, how do you find yourself when you play so many different roles?
Well, you know, I thank God I didn't start acting as a child, because that would be probably harder, I would think. And I knew who I was, since a lot of things happened to me so fast, you know, with the like political regime in Russia, and we had this thing happening where we had no food, you know, and I knew who I was pretty much then. I knew, like, I could see how people reacted. We grew up under strange and like not normal circumstances, you know, like not having food for days, and you know, being chased by the government. Like my dad was a nuclear scientist, so I knew who I was. Yeah, he actually was. He was the right hand of Kurchatov, you know, the guy who went to Chernobyl.
No shit.
So yeah, he was a it was very interesting. It was not normal
How
circumstance
often were you
either.
getting chased by the government?
Well,
Quite frequently.
yeah, a lot, because they went to Chernobyl and like the whole thing, like there was so much political thing involved into what to disclose and what not to disclose in the face of disaster. And we were chased because my dad, like, they didn't want him to leave Russia at that point, when the borders were closed, and he was always chased. Yeah, like there were always people who were like with him when he would go to conference in Washington D.C. or anywhere in Europe. There would be people who check on you.
Mm. Wow, that is insane.
Yeah,
Nuclear scientist just
yeah,
getting chased all the time by the government in Russia, and then
yeah.
you're a model. Like, that's crazy.
I know. Yeah, he didn't approve first, but when he saw like that I was making a living at 15 and I was making more than him, like it was also crazy as well.
But how do you like start that in Russia, right? Like how do you go from nuclear scientist's daughter to getting your contract or getting picked up as a model?
It was funny because I was at the school and I remember Giselle, like I was 13 and she was shooting in our school. I think like I even traced it. Like there were some pictures in Russian Vogue of her, coming to us.
Mm-hmm.
It was the time of the 90s. Things started to change, right? Like the regime, everything was collapsing. And a lot of American, companies like L'Oreal, M&M's, they would come to Russia to shoot commercials because all these products started appearing in Russia. So they needed to kind of, get the customers. Like people didn't know what Bounty was. I think I like developed an allergic reaction because I ate too much Bounty one day. But they needed Russian models. So that's how I got started. I just got discovered on the street, and pulled in. I mean, I was modeling when I was a child for like Russians, for the newspaper. And then I acted in one like comedy, one time too. But then professionally signing contracts, I think it started when American and French companies started coming in, and the communism was not there anymore. So there wasn't only propaganda, they were different economy.
Mm-hmm. How culture shocked were you when you moved to Paris?
Oh my God, I was so culture shocked. Like, first of all, I didn't understand French cheese. Like, I thought it went bad, and like I couldn't understand how could they eat bad smelly cheese. There were a lot of food that like I just was a shock for me. I used to hide it under my bed growing up because there was not enough of it, and suddenly I had so much food, and I still had my habits. So being at like fashion shows backstage, I would walk around and like hide food in my purse and toilet paper. Oh my God, I remember I used to hide.
It's all coming back now. Cheese and toilet paper.
I swear to God, we used to like, in Tokyo with girls, because, we were still saving money and sending it to like our families, and like a lot of people's depended on us models. So we would go into casting offices of like big corporations and like stack up on toilet paper and bring it back. And even, my husband is still laughing. He's like, you have a Prada purse and you still hide food in like your Prada purse? What's happening?
You just never know. It's like the people that survived, back in the Depression. Like they were just so scared of the banks, they would just have cash everywhere. I think you're going to see that. I think you're going to see that again. I think people are going to be afraid to invest in the banks because of everything that's going on. That's an amazing story. Like that is insane. Like your story is insane. Like that is crazy.
It is.
You're very world.
Well, I'm sure we'll have so many stories now with everything that's happening. I think like people will have a very, very deep conversations about life.
Well, I mean, yeah, because it's going to be on Skype. It's going to be on Zoom because we can't go anywhere, right? Like we're going to reconnect. Sure. We're going to reconnect. Well, I mean, now we're, a lot of people are home working from home or not working at all. And now it's kind of like time to disconnect, right? Disconnect to reconnect with the family. So there is a little bit of a silver lining going on here.
For sure. 100%. It's interesting because I was joking, but it's not a joke. Like one thing is like you say like you have a family on the paper, like I'm married, blah, blah, blah. But now I actually have to live with my husband,
But it's crazy, so right? Like, I mean, you think about a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, a month ago, where we were at in this country, where we were just hustle and bustle, right? Like, we were just going. And now this thing, this invisible virus that has taken over, basically, taking us hostage, is essentially slowing everything down, and it's going back to the basics.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's all about being present, and you can see it's challenging because everything comes out, like in these intimate situations when you're stuck with your family members, all your history and all unresolved issues that you could just like walk away from.
Sure.
Are here to stay.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I love it. But seriously, what would you say to somebody who's trying to, go towards their goal, who's really trying hard to find their path and their journey, and they're on the verge of quitting, right? Like, they have, the confidence is jacked up. They're, the resistance is getting too much. Like, what would you say to them to inspire them to keep going?
What I discovered is other people's no are not the answer, because people say no because they see limits within themselves, but it has nothing to do with you personally. It's just the reflection of their own limitations. So I would say there are no limits unless you set them up for yourself. I think the glass ceiling is the ceiling that you set up. And once you see that and really kind of go out in the world and test it, and there are always creative ways to make anything happen, any kind of dreams that you have. You just have to be very specific and write it down and know exactly what you want, what you want to create and do. It's very actionable. And then you just have to find a creative way to do it. And when people say no, you know that it's not about you, and you wish them best, and, they will learn at their own pace.
I love that.
Yeah.
Eugenia, what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh my God. Well, it's a hard one. I'd say kindness. Yeah. I think it's the most important quality, and compassion. I don't want to be like, oh, the funniest, the whatever, I think kindness and connection is the qualities that I try to cultivate. And I hope that people will connect with that.
Sure. I think people will, always want to connect with kindness and caring and love, right? Like, that's one thing that a lot of people are attracted to. I think, when you're in the industry that you are, I think people, the one thing that I say is, if you want to be successful, you have to be different. And there's a lot of, politics in the entertainment industry. And it's like, if you want to be different, you just got to be the opposite of that. Like, and I'm reading this book that's helping me out big time. It's Stephen Cope is the author. It's called Yoga and the Quest for the True Self, and is essentially about, basically, he talks about, knowing your dharma, doing it full out, letting go of the fruit of your work, and just having faith in God. And that's all we can do, really, is, you're entitled to doing the work, but you're not entitled to the fruit of your work.
I love that.
Yeah. And letting go of that, and just having faith in God that you're doing your journey, that you're doing your dharma. And dharma means the work of your life. So doing the work of your life and having faith that it'll all work out. That's
great. I love that. I love your deep research into the subject.
That's not that deep. Come on. I'm not
Still.
Eugenia, I want to say thanks for joining the show. This has been a great conversation. It's gone by way too quick.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's such a pleasure to talk to you, and I love your questions. They're definitely very different, and thank you for being so authentic and connecting. And very excited to learn where you go from here.
I want to say thank you to Eugenia for joining the show. Thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. Please take this time to leave a rating and a review. It helps me scale the podcast. Thank you guys so much. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Fatherhood is lit. Make sure to check out my boy Taylor on Instagram at DudeDad. Guy is funny as I don't know what, but yeah, this was a great conversation. This was a great episode. Thank you guys for listening, and I will talk to you later.